Today, I want to talk about the upcoming episode Mastermind, which is set to air this November. And in doing so, I want to talk about who the actual mastermind of this episode is going to be, whether maybe Andrealphus or even Mammon. My name is Deepcut, demons call me ImpCut, but you can call me PimpCut. Now, in the Helluva boss trailer for the rest of Season 2, we also get a list of titles, which included Ghost Effers, yes, I'm still saying Ghost Effers, even though some comments are getting very upset about it, Mastermind, and Sinsmas, coming out in October, November, and December, respectively. Now, you are a very attractive person, so I imagine you already saw my video on Ghost Effers and what that episode will be about. Link in the pinned comment down below in case you're ugly. But for those of you who are less attractive, this episode seems to line up pretty obviously with the footage of Blitz and Millie investigating a haunted hotel, Luigi's Mansion style, which turns out to only be haunted by a possessor demon from the Envy Ring. This leaves very little footage in the trailer left that could be part of Masterminds or Sinsmas. Most of the remaining footage involves elite demons such as the 7 Deadly Sins and the Ars Goetia coming together for some sort of formal legal meeting in a palace decorated with apple and serpent imagery. This would make this Lucifer's palace or courtroom or what have you, and it made sense to me that the Deadly Sins might be meeting on Sinsmas, or a mass for the sins themselves. However, some fans have been speculating that Sinsmas will be more of a Christmas special type finale, and I have a theory video coming out later for that. And with very little footage left outside of the royals interacting here, I have to imagine that the finale doesn't have nearly as much animated as Mastermind would. So with that in mind, here's my theory for what would happen in the episode Mastermind, assuming it really is about this royal court meeting. Now, right now in the show, there are two key antagonists, and while only one of them may be a real mastermind here, it would be fitting for both of them to be masterminding different plans of revenge in this episode. The first and more powerful of these two is of course Mammon, the deadly sin of greed. Right now, he has a vendetta against Fizzarali, which has grown to a vendetta against Asmodeus. Mammon owned Fizzarali as a brand, and even though Fizz clearly won his contest, he did so while humiliating Mammon in front of their biggest fans. When Mammon tried to attack Fizzarali, Asmodeus came to his defense, and Mammon immediately tried to turn it from a physical attack into social sabotage. He revealed the nature of Ozzy and Fizz's relationship to the public, but the fans just loved this, so Mammon had no choice but to retreat and promise he would find a way to take him down later. The best place to do this would be in some sort of legal meeting where Mammon could continue to socially sabotage Asmodeus, but with other elites who have power over Asmodeus instead of just the general public. This meeting that we see the Sins attending, I imagine to be an actual event where each royal is given the opportunity to present issues they are facing in their jurisdictions that would require the approval or participation of other elites to fix. This would be a council who is ultimately hoping to maintain a peaceful control over Hell, but they would have territorial issues and conflicts that would need to be resolved. Instead of each royal hashing things out directly with the related parties, the entire elite system can weigh in, with the idea being that the general approval of all royals would keep everything balanced and everyone happy. This is a legal system similar to those in medieval Europe, where the different royals could convene and resolve any issues, or even a bit like the British Parliament today, where the royals and special appointees still can be used to represent people in places that they don't necessarily have ties to or investment in. Stolas's palace seems to have been built for him to rule over Imp City to some degree, not as a king or a ruler, but just as someone who has jurisdiction over it. It appears that it would be his job to weigh in on the area at this meeting. The city was founded in the 1980s, not long before Stolas was born, with Paimon's castle there eventually taking on Stolas's name when he became old enough to have power there. In the case of Hell, however, a personal investment is not what the other elites want you to have in your personal territory. The royals aren't meeting in order to talk about how to take care of their people against each other's, but rather how to properly exploit each region for their particular goals. This clinical approach is much easier to manipulate and interfere with from the outside, as any personal investment a royal makes in their territory could be seen as going against the ultimate goals of Hell's royals. With that in mind, Mammon could paint Asmodeus out to be someone who is ultimately hurting the goals of the 7 Sins and the Goetia, getting him in trouble with the royals in both groups. Asmodeus is rare in that he is both a king in the Ars Goetia and the ruler of the Lust Ring, making him one of the 7 Deadly Sins. Theoretically, this should give him more power, but the more political power you have, the more people you have to answer to. As just a deadly sin, he may not have to worry about the problems of the Goetia too much, but as a member of both, he would be facing derision from pretty much every royal possible if he does something wrong. Asmodeus, despite his 2 roles, doesn't seem that important to the hierarchies, being very focused on his own factories and toy productions in the Lustring. The one thing he definitely does to advance Hell's goals, however, that we know of at least, is sending the Succubus up to Earth, where they can interact with humans and seduce them and spread vice. But that could ultimately be what comes back to haunt him here. Other deadly sins like Mammon or Beelzebub do seem to be focused on their own projects as well, but what they end up producing is pretty horrifying compared to Asmodeus, who arguably has the best quality of life provided in any of the rings. The exceptions to this may be the Envy ring, which we haven't seen, or the Sloth ring, which does look pretty fancy, but even then, everyone there is addicted to drugs. And in other rings like Gluttony, we have Beelzebub's parties that are just a cover for the horrifying puppy pound operation that she's running to keep herself drunk. Mammon, meanwhile, is so focused on extracting wealth from everyone around him that he's crippled his entire ring in doing so. And the imps in the Wrath ring just appear to be farming slaves. The point is that for creatures that were evolved to be seductive, the Succubus and Incubus are among the most comfortable and healthy living characters in Hell. Much of this seems to come directly from the service they provide in corrupting the earth, with Succubus having free access to spread lust there. This appears to be such a huge operation that even Vraska can't escape it, playing a celebrity on Earth to get even more sinners in Hell eventually, who inevitably just end up dying in the annual purge. Going to Earth seems to come with huge rules and restrictions for the Succubus, however, and Blitz seems to have broken all of them. There are rules that you have to wear a human disguise, and there's probably rules about not appearing on the news such as we see in the pilot, and probably rules about not murdering humans for your own profit. But the IMP gang has done all of these things and has managed to get captured on footage for every single mission, leading to humans now actually trying to invade Hell. After the episode Ghost Effers, yes, I'm still saying Ghost Effers, Blitz will probably be in even more trouble, with the Possessor Demon, who I imagine has permission to haunt this hotel, being invaded by Blitz and his gang. Now, normally, this would just be Stolas's problem, but very recently, Stolas managed to convince Asmodeus to give Blitz an Osmodian crystal. Now, there are plenty of black market Osmodian crystals floating around, as Barbie Wire seems to prove, but she at least has the decency to actually use the human disguise that it seems to inherently come with. Blitz in Ghost Effers still wears a bad wig, which is of course just more fun than having to see our characters go human every time they have a mission on Earth, but with all of his crazy appearances on camera, this has to be seen as a bad thing by the Royals of Hell. And now, suddenly, all of Blitz's actions will be pinned to Asmodeus, who abused his power as a favor, less so to Stolas, but more so to Fizzarali at the end of the day, who ended up asking Asmodeus to go through with the favor for Stolas. If Mammon can get this information about the Osmodian crystal deal, that would have devastating consequences for Asmodeus, which hurts both him and Fizz at the end of the day. And Mammon, I think, would very much be able to paint this as a sort of favoritism towards native species. He already gives the native species a more decadent looking lifestyle than the other rings, and he would be seen as not just dating one particular imp, but doing favors for imps that get into the jurisdiction of potential other royals, particularly Satan. There are implications of there being war missions, whether up on Earth or right there in Hell, that the imps in particular are involved in when not farming in the Wrath Ring. We see Satan in the trailer, and he seems to be pretty angry, calling someone a disgrace, perhaps even Asmodeus. If Asmodeus or Stolas was giving these sort of job opportunities to imps like Blitz, Moxie, and Millie that disrupt the flow of what imps expect in their own missions from Satan, he could be pretty angry. It is giving the lower species more wealth and more happiness and more of what they want that the evil royals would see as inspiring change in Hell, leading to the lower classes not just having little vices that keep them placated, but healthy enough societies that they don't need to do the work of the sins and Goetia anymore. And of course, somehow, Andrealphus could be the one to deliver this important information to Mammon. It may come out indirectly, with none of this information going to Mammon himself, but just in the general legal proceedings in this courthouse. Andrealphus, I imagine, wants to talk about the failings of Stolas, which would involve sleeping with this imp and perhaps revealing that he had traded the grimoire for this, something no imp should have. Stolas could argue this isn't true, citing the Osmodian crystal as a legal way that Blitz could do his business. But as we discussed, Mammon could still play this as something horrible for Osmodius to have done. Leviathan, the ruler of the Envy Ring where the possessors live, may even argue that Blitz's business shouldn't have been legalized under Osmodius, as it interferes with his business, which seems to be making possessors haunt houses and hotels and such on Earth. VivziePop said in a tweet that we would be seeing both Satan and Leviathan in an upcoming episode, and since we see Satan in the trailer seemingly for this episode, it would make sense that Leviathan appears too, and perhaps he'll have a speaking role where he does weigh in on this. Mammon, however, doesn't seem very intelligent, and instead, Andrealphus as one of the lowest members in these royal hierarchies would be a lot more interesting to be the true mastermind here. His ultimate goal is not Osmodius or Fizz, but Stolas and Blitz, and he seems like he is sneaky enough to find a way to use Mammon to get what he wants, while convincing Mammon he's getting what he wants. We can even see in the trailer that Stolas and Blitz appear in some royal location where they are being attacked. Some say it's Andrealphus, who we do see rising in one shot, but others theorize that the big guy is Satan himself getting involved. Of course, neither I imagine will die, and I don't know who Blitz thinks he's going to defeat with that sword, but to find out what might happen in the season finale Sinsmas, hit that subscribe button because we have a video coming out about that soon. See you guys then.